All eyes are on Tunisia as the country heads to the polls. Will a new president be able to fulfill the hopes still unrealized after the revolution? I'm Imran Garta, and today's newsmaker is Tunisia's election. This Sunday, Tunisians pick a successor to their first freely elected president. Beji Caid Essebsi died in office in July, triggering a flurry of political activity for an election sooner than expected. Enter Ennahda, the religiously inspired party that's been involved in government since the revolution, but who had never put forward anyone for president until now. They join a wide-open field of more than 24 candidates, surely a sign of a healthy democracy. In fact, it feels almost cliché to describe Tunisia as the Arab Spring's only success story. And yet, as Natalie Perhonen reports, many young voters are disillusioned and are still hoping for more jobs, more tourists, and a better economic future.
Tunisia is one of the world's youngest democracies. Sunday will be only the second time voters get to cast a ballot for a new leader. The death of former President Beji Caid Essebsi in July has brought the vote forward by 2 months. 26 candidates are running for the presidency, but a few prominent contenders stand out. There's sitting Prime Minister Youssef Chahed, who has introduced unpopular public spending cuts. Ahmed Bouazzi from the religious Ennahda party, and former Defence Minister Abdelkarim Zebidi. Media mogul Nabil Karoui is in the running, but he's in detention on charges of money laundering and tax fraud. There's also Ahmed Amouri, a former official in ousted leader Zine El Abidine Ben Ali's government. To date, all Tunisia's presidents have been secular, making this election a possible turning point for the country. Ennahda, the largest political party, has nominated a presidential candidate for the first time. The party describes itself as Muslim Democrats. Mourou is seen as a contender who can appeal to the wider electorate while still maintaining the party's traditional supporter base. He says he wants to unite the country.
We want Tunisia to be known throughout the continent as a country known for solidarity, cooperation, enrichment, and permanent development.
The new president will find themselves at the center of power in a nation that still hasn't addressed most of the social and economic issues that drove the revolution back in 2011. The national unemployment rate is at more than 15%, but inland, it's even higher. In Sidi Bouzid, a city far away from the capital, some young people are already disillusioned.
I did not vote. I did not register to vote, and I will not vote. Why? Because politicians are thieves. They care only about their own interests and power. Do you think the future president will think of the people?
Convincing people a democratic government will make a difference is one more challenge for Tunisia's next leader. Natalie Perhonen, The Newsmakers.
Well, to discuss this, I'm joined from Montreal by Ahmed Amouri. He's a member of the Prime Minister's Party, the secular-leaning Tahya, Tounes. In Tunis, we have Mehrezia Labidi. She's an executive member of Ennahda party, as well as a former vice president of parliament. And Ahmed Bouazzi is co-founder of the opposition Democratic Current Party. Good to have you all on the program. Ahmed Amouri, let's start with you. Over the past 8 years, we were always talking about two blocks, right? We were talking about Ennahda and Nida Tunis, and on the one hand, we had a more religiously leaning bloc, and on the other hand, a more secular leaning bloc. This time around, we look at a presidential election with so many candidates and a multiplicity of views. Does it show us that we are beyond the two more simple blocks of the past, and Tunisian politics and Tunisian democracy is far more complicated these days?
Yes, absolutely. This image of 24 presidential elections candidates facing each other in a democratic debate is a very powerful image in the Middle East. We're not used to it. It's a first in Tunisia. It's definitely a first in the Arab world. And that means a lot because if you compare this to the situation like 8 years ago, the Tunisian electorate, so-called electorate, used to have a fight or flight psychological reaction to Ben Ali or politicians in general. Now he gets to pick and choose from 26 candidates and based on their program, based on their charisma. So I'm keeping, let's keep up the optimistic demeanor.
Mehrezia Labidi, Ennahda fielding a candidate for president for the first time. Why is it so important to you to field a presidential candidate?
I think it's high time, first of all, to have our candidate for presidency. And we are one of the main political parties in number and also in number of MPs and in presence throughout the country. So it's, I think, the normal order of things to have a candidate for presidency. We searched a long time for, let's say, a consensus or consensual candidate, but, well, after talking and discussing with many, let's say, different partners in Tunisia, we think that our candidate, Ustad and MP Abdel Fattah Mourou, is an appropriate person to be candidate and to lead Tunisia in this period.
Yeah, Abdel Fattah Mourou seen as one of the front runners, but there are a lot of front runners, and that's why this is so unpredictable. Let's go to Ahmed Bouazzi now. Ahmed Bouazzi, who do you think is likely to get it in this first round, or at least who are the two that are most likely to be on top in the first round of elections?
What's good in this election is no one can say surely who will gain this election, even who will be in the first and second, because it's really they will have many surprises. Of course, Ennahda has a big block. Of course, the candidate who is in prison now will have a good score, but we have outsiders, and our candidate Mohamed Abu can be one of these outsiders. We have the old Ben Ali machine and the establishment who is behind Abdelkrim Zbidi or behind Abir Moussi, but we have many others that are ready to take the first or second place.
Right.
So really, right now, we don't know.
Right. I want to go back to Ahmed Amouri here, and of course I know that because you're with Tahya Tounes, you'll be rooting for the Prime Minister Youssef Chahid, who's with Tahya Tounes. However, interestingly, a lot of people see Nabil Karoui, who was just mentioned by Ahmed Bouazzi as the candidate in prison. They see him as the front runner. What does it say that one of the front runners that a lot of Tunisians are supporting is currently in prison, hasn't been convicted yet, but is in jail on charges of money laundering, on charges of corruption and fraud? What does that say about the current political landscape and the type of influence that this man still has, even though he seems to be tarnished?
Yeah, it says a lot actually about a phenomenon that's going on all over the world. Populism has been on the growth in Europe, in the States, in the Philippines, and it's the same thing in Tunisia. That's what we're fighting right now. We're fighting populism, we're fighting corruption, and I think that Mr. Nabil Karoui represents that. He's not the only one, but he represents that very well in Tunisia. His case started in 2016 by iWatch, which is an AGO. It's a watchdog organization. So it's not Tahya Tounes who started that. We have an independent judicial system, and we have an elections commission, 5 independent constitutional bodies, and it's working. It means that it is working. And by the way, like, we never pushed anyone because Nabil Karoui theoretically and practically he's still running for the presidential race. So we could have done something else. We could have tried to push the judicial system or the judges to just hurry up with the procedure and make him out of the race, get him out of the race. But we didn't do that.
Mehrezia Labidi, a lot of young people,
anyway.
certainly, I want to bring in Mehrezia. Mehrezia, a lot of young people still supporting Nabil Karoui,
Yes.
and it seems as if the more likely that he might actually be convicted, the more support he gets. So Ahmed Amouri says this is testament to the rise of populism in Tunisia, just like everywhere else. But isn't it also a sign of the failure of your party, Ennahda, and Nida Tounes, and others over the past 8 years, that people are looking for different candidates that don't represent what they've seen so far since they've had democracy?
First of all, in Ennahda, we are not happy that there is a candidate for the presidency in the present. This is not good for anybody yet. Justice is independent, and it is a case now before a court, and it's up to justice to decide. Second, of course, there is demands of Tunisian population that has not yet been answered, but many others have been. The task is heavy, and I think that populism found, yes, a fertile, let's say, field where to grow. Yet, Tunisian people also have a high level of political awareness, and we have to discuss with them, assuming our responsibilities, but telling them also that making charity cannot make a state.
Right.
And that to lead a country like Tunisia, we need more than charity foundation. We need program, we need vision to really find solutions to the issues, to the problem of unemployment and also of development. So to answer problems and not just to give them some medication to, let's say, reduce their impact. And we need a president for that, knowing state, knowing law, and having a vision, a program, and not a charity guy, even if he is sympathetic.
Okay,
and I'm really worrying as a politician that the state of victim is serving Mr. Karoui, because people, I'm listening to them in the streets, they say, oh, he's a victim, so we want to help him. We do not vote for people to help them, but so they can lead us and have a responsibility.
Okay, and just for clarity, so what Mehrezia is referring to is the television channels that are backed by Mr. Karoui, showcasing and highlighting a lot of his charitable work across the country in the build-up to the election. At the same time, he's currently in jail. And for more clarity, again, in terms of the division of power, what's fascinating about Tunisia is the president is responsible for foreign policy, defense, and national security. The prime minister, some would argue on paper, because he leads the government and oversees domestic policy, has greater power, but the symbolism of the president is more, which makes this all the more interesting as to see who the Tunisians would vote for now. Ahmed Bouazzi, as we look at that symbolism of the president, are we seeing a shake-up in the role also of the president as Tunisia moves forward, as the democracy matures?
Of course. But let me say before that the Nabil Karoui and Slim Riahi are the sign that we are living a very special era in Tunisia. Both of them have problems with justice, they have problems with money laundering, and both of them are candidates. Where one is in jail and the other is escaped to France. He's living in France. And let's say also that this TV channel is owned in part by Berlusconi, who is very well known in Italy, and he took power with dirty money. And the other candidates also are receiving a lot of money from corrupted people. They give them money to be protected after the election. And so we in the democratic current, we don't have money. We have only our militants to give us money, and so we are in a very big debt to continue to meet the people. So we have not money. We cannot make advertisement in the streets like the others. And also one thing is the parties who were in power the last 5 years, they put Tunisia in a very low economic situation. The national currency is lost about more than 50% of its value, and the inflation is very high.
So let's ask Ahmed, allow me to come in here for a second. Let's ask Mehrezia if that is fair. Okay, Mehrezia Labidi, your party was in power for a long period of time. He's blaming you and the other leaders of the past few years. You wrecked the economy. That's why Tunisia is in this situation. Is that fair?
The burden, the economic burden and the economic legacy from the decades and decades of dictatorship was already very, very heavy. And if we have to judge, let's say, by what kind of achievements, I may remind people that for 2 years that my party, Ennahda, was leading a coalition called the Troika, we realized between 2.5 and 3.5 the rate of growth, the economic growth. Of course, since 2014, we are participating, but not leading the coalition. We assume our responsibilities. It is a very difficult period, but I think the most accountable is the leading party. We are not escaping our responsibilities. We've called many times for reforms, and we think that in going to these presidential elections, and then after that, legislative election, we tell our people, your choice will determine who is going to be responsible of reforming our economy and who is going to be accountable. It's up to the choice of people.
Understood. Let's ask Ahmed Amouri then to circle back to your point about populism. Ahmed Amouri, you can't blame people for turning to populism because they're being faced with the same options, the same politicians that were at the wheel when the economy kept on sliding. So why should they give you another chance? Why should they give candidates who are connected to the establishment another chance?
For different reasons. I'll give you an example, like Youssef al-Shahed, when he took power as the prime minister, there was, I don't know how many billions of loans taken already from Tunisia from the IMF. So, and he knew that, and he was aware of it, and he told the people, like, it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard for the next 3 or 4 years. And it is hard. I'll give them another reason. We've been fighting terrorism for the last 5 years. We've been allocating 18%, and that's huge, of our national budget for security, for defense, and that's at the cost of healthcare, that's at the cost of education, that's at the cost of lots of things. So we're doing our part. Like I heard Mr. Bouazzi talking about the devaluation of the Tunisian dinar. The Tunisian dinar has gone up 10% if you compare it to the euro. And not only the euro, because I live in Canada, and the same thing here. against the Canadian dollar.
Okay.
So,
so let me come in
people,
here,
I know,
Certainly.
like economic hardship is a reality in Tunisia.
Right, and that.
But Youssef al-Shahed represent the youth.
Okay.
Let me bounce on that, please. Youssef al-Shahed represents the youth, the future. He's the youngest
manifesting itself.
prime minister.
Certainly, Ahmed, and your point is well made, and I don't want to be rude here, but we are running out of time, right? The point is that this is manifesting in political apathy and people don't trust the system anymore. Let me give you two examples here, right? In Middle East Eye, Faisal Idrous, writing from Kasserine just yesterday, many youngsters that he speaks to there saying that Daesh is still winning hearts and minds because there's no development in that place. Life is terrible in that place and they're turning towards Daesh, they're turning towards Jund al-Khilafa and KUBN, Katibat Uqba bin Nafi, and so on, and all these extremist groups. Another interesting one, the Afro Barometer survey from 2018 found that only 46% of Tunisians believe that democracy is the most preferable form of government. That's down from 70% in 2013. So, Ahmed Amouri, the people are losing belief in this system now because the economy is not working for them. Briefly, sir, your answer, your response to that.
That's true. They're losing, and we see this across the whole political spectrum. They're losing faith, of course, and I do understand that there is economic hardship in Tunisia. Their lives haven't improved that much, but we're doing our best. Everything, you have to put everything in context. Everything. Fighting terrorism, like providing security for people, like it's not an easy matter. It's not an easy matter. But I can relate to and the Economist's article that I read yesterday, and it's keeping an optimistic demeanor like about the year 2020, 2021. So lucky the government who's going to inherit this, because it's going to be easier for him. We're going to get out of the of this situation. But I know I can provide you with whatever, like numbers. Like for example, like we have freedom of the press like we gained 20 points in the last 2 years from 97 to 72. Okay. It doesn't mean much for mean much for people in the street. I know that, but we're doing our best within the context.
And this is why we're having this discussion, and this is why Tunisia is so fascinating to discuss on this platform to an international audience. The world is watching. The world sees Tunisia as the one success story of the Arab Spring, unfortunately, and this is why everybody is backing you, is hoping for the best for Tunisian democracy. Listen, there's going to be possibly a second presidential round. Well, there's going to be results. There's going to be possibly a second presidential round. There's going to be parliamentary elections. We're going to have ample opportunity to continue discussing Tunisian politics here. And I'm looking forward to having you all back on the program. But for now, I've got to move on. Ahmed Amouri, Mehrezia Labidi, and Ahmed Bouazzi, I thank you all for joining us here on the Newsmakers. Well, we've been talking about the youth and what they want. We decided, why not talk to them? Amir Fahri is a Tunisian author. He's also 15 years old and has grown up really only knowing political freedom in post-revolution Tunisia. Now, you can watch my full interview with him on our YouTube channel, but here's a snippet of what he told me earlier when I asked what things he wanted to change about his country.
I remember when was the revolution in 2011, we were having our house in Tunisia, in Rades, and there was some shots in the road, and I was with my parents upstairs in our bedroom, and we locked the door. And I had my computer. The first time my father gave me the computer, he wanted me to explain what was in my heart as feelings and emotions. And when I was seeing and watching all what's happening all around the world, I want to say that young people and children who live all these wars are innocent. They did nothing. They are victims of what politics do. I think what I wanted to say, it's time now to act. It's time now to officially support the children. The children, when I see my mother who is Iraqi, and when I visit the children in Iraq, they are always smiling. When I spoke to them, they were singing, they were playing music, they were playing piano. We do not imagine them as as this. When we see now Europe, when we see Germany, when we see the Scandinavian countries, when we see even France today, when we see the extremist political parties who are growing up, and all the borders that are becoming closed to refugees, I think that we do not see this part and this side of the children, the side that they are innocent and they want peace, they have one dream. And today, I would like to say that I have a dream as a child, a dream of peace. And I would like to explain it in my books, but I would like also to explain it when I'm meeting with all the world leaders, because we do not have many people who have the chance to meet with the world leaders. But I think that everyone wants to have a chance. Everyone wants to have a chance of explaining that he wants peace in the world.
Okay, that's all for this episode of The Newsmakers. Until next time, thank you for watching. Bye-bye.